Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Annie and this is Album Unknown. So for the past year, I have been listening to an album a day, every single day, which is 365 albums. And I have attempted to do as many different artists as possible. I started it as just kind of like a little project, a little hobby, keep me busy. And then I decided, you know what, like I'm finding some really awesome artists and some of them are not as well known. Some of them are, but you might not have listened to them. So I figured I would start this channel just to give you kind of the intro into some of the music that I was finding and that I'm enjoying. So the way this is gonna work, I'm gonna give you some facts, some cool facts about the album, and then I am going to give you my opinion on the album, give you my favorite song off the album, and anything else that I may feel like I want to include. So all of these albums have been randomly selected. So I used a spreadsheet, put all of the albums in it, and then did a random number generator to go through the list and pick which ones I was going to do. I'm doing 7 per video, and I'm hoping, we'll see, to post 1 video every week, but this is a hobby at the moment, so we'll see how it goes, but So without further ado, let's get into the video. Alright, so the first album that has been randomly selected for us is Channel Orange by Frank Ocean. Some of you may have heard of him, but he's like kind of underground, and I'm very much kidding. Anyways, so Channel Orange by Frank Ocean came out in 2012. It has 17 songs, coming in at a total of 55 minutes and 47 seconds. It was released on July 10th, 2015 by Def Jam. All right, we have some crazy features on here, my friends. We have Earl Sweatshirt, Andre 3000. We've got Tyler, the Creator, co-writing. We've got Pharrell Williams co-writing, and we have John Mayer on guitar. So pretty stacked list. The songwriters, there weren't very many. Honestly, Frank wrote most of the songs with his longtime collaborator and producer, Melee. According to an article that GQ wrote, they wrote pretty much the entire album within 3 weeks, which is kind of insane because I don't think I could write 1 song in 3 weeks, and they wrote the entire album. So, kind of crazy. Throughout the album, one of the most interesting things about it was there was a combination of male and female pronouns that Frank was singing about. And this led to a lot of speculation as far as like his sexuality and stuff, which ended up having him come out with this open letter on Tumblr, which kind of addressed everything and talked about how his first love was with a man and kind of confirmed that he more identified as a bisexual. So that was kind of interesting, but also controversial. The styles of the album have been described as electro funk, pop soul, jazz funk, and psychedelic, which I would definitely agree with. If you've heard the album, you definitely know that is the case. So Frank, in an interview, said that a lot of the album heavily draws on his personal experiences, which definitely makes sense as well. One of the most interesting things about the album is the name of the album, Channel Orange, which Frank said is based on his grapheme synesthesia. So if you know of synesthesia, it's basically where you see letters as colors. They just portray themselves or certain words as colors. So this one is for letters and numbers, and he wanted to portray the color that he saw the summer he first fell in love, and that was orange. And I think that's really sweet and really cute. Alright, now to my opinions about the album. It is iconic, obviously. Everybody knows it, everybody loves it. If you haven't heard it, highly recommend. My favorite song off of the album is Super Rich Kids, which is the one that Earl Sweatshirt is featured on. I would say I first heard Frank Ocean, and probably specifically this song, back in like 2015, because that's when I first started getting more into music, so to speak. Prior to that, I just kind of listened to whatever was popular, whatever was on the radio. No shame in that game. I respect it. It's easy. I feel it. But the downside of that is there's so much great music out there that you are never going to find on the radio. If you're looking to broaden your horizons, highly recommend reaching out and finding awesome things. And while we may know Frank Ocean is one of the biggest artists today, at the time when this album was released, he was not. He was still just coming out. He was just well, both literally and figuratively, coming out on the scene. And, you know, that makes, like, it's kind of interesting to start from there and then see his progression onward with his music. I love the album. I'm not going to do a ranking system for these albums because I'm not trying to copy Anthony Fantano. He's got his own little thing and I'm gonna do mine. Alright, moving on to the next album, we have The Queen is Dead by The Smiths. You may or may not know The Smiths. Some of the most insufferable people I have ever met are in love with The Smiths. And you know what? I get it. I think it's a little excessive, but I get it. Good band. So, The Queen is Dead. Alright, 10 songs coming in at 37 minutes and 11 seconds. It was released on June 16th, 1986 by Sire Records out of the UK. When this album came out, it spent 22 weeks on the UK album chart and it peaked at number 2. It is currently on the Rolling Stones list of greatest albums of all time at number 218, but of course many fans consider it to be the best album of all time. You can say that about any artist you're fond of, but the Smiths fans are very, very particular and very, very intense. And honestly, sometimes I'm a little scared of them. But it's okay. One of the most obvious things about this album is its obviously anti-imperialistic themes. And gee, why would a rock band from the UK, be singing about anti-imperialistic things? Crazy stuff to think about. Who knows? They could have just decided to do it for funsies, but yeah, no, I don't think so. Anyways, so my opinions on the album, I thought it was pretty good. I had never listened to the Smiths before. I had heard a lot of my friends who are more into like classic rock, like underground classic rock. I mean, the Smiths are a huge band, but they're not one of the ones you think of automatically when you start thinking of classic rock bands. As you can see, I have a whole variety of them on my wall here, and the Smiths are not one of them. However, do think they are a great band. Wasn't super in love with the album. It's probably not one I would come back to often. I did enjoy it and I do think it is worth giving a listen through. And my favorite song off the album is Cemetery Gates. I thought it was just a much more different vibe than what the other songs on the album gave. It's a little bit more upbeat, which I don't think you see from the Smiths a whole lot. I could be wrong. Again, I'm not very well versed in their discography, but this song was very intriguing to me and I just really enjoyed it. Alright, so next we have a classic. We have Slowhand by Eric Clapton, some people's favorite artist. We'll get into that later. Alright, so when this album originally came out, it had 9 songs coming in at about 39 minutes and 16 seconds. It was released on November 25th, 1977 by RSO Records. We've got a lot to get into with this album. We'll start off with the title. The title is actually based on Eric Clapton's nickname. It was given to him by another artist who used it to describe his style of guitar playing, even though it's not super accurate, but you know, people make up nicknames and they just stick. So you gotta go with it. It has elements of blues rock and classic rock. Those are the 2 genres that are most commonly used to describe it. It makes sense. It fits the mold. Not much more to say about that. We have some pretty interesting writing credits on here, some absolute icons in the world of classic rock. We have Eric Clapton, obviously. We have Bob Marley, Bob Dylan, and George Harrison of Beatles fame. So now let's get into like the not so fun stuff. One of the most interesting things that I found about this album is the probably most popular song off this album is Cocaine, which is actually an anti-drug song. However, it was banned in Argentina due to some people not understanding what the message of the song was, which could be understandable as there's an obvious language barrier between here and Argentina. Now I have a statement prepared about Eric Clapton the man. So he has recently come under fire for his anti-vaccine statements. Gotta love it. However, he is no stranger to controversy. With a career spanning almost 6 decades, Clapton has been in the public eye for a very long time. These most recent statements are fairly consistent with his conservative views that he has spouted since the 70s. Additionally, Clapton has been credited with making some incredibly racist and anti-immigrant comments. This has led him to be a very polarizing figure in the rock community, for good reason. Many people recognize his incredible guitar skills, but also call him rock music's biggest colonist, as major portions of his discography are R&B and reggae inspired, but he, of course, as many of our favorite classic rock artists did, stole those from Black artists and did not give them credit. So, you know, super cool stuff about that. As my opinion goes on this, it's a classic rock album. I am a fan of classic rock. Cocaine, very entertaining song. I've listened to it for years. I'm sure many others of you have at least heard it before, as well as the classic love song Wonderful Tonight. But at the same time, there becomes a point where you can't separate the artist from the music. And I think that is a common theme among a lot of like classic rock albums as well, because of the historic theft of Black music without crediting Black artists. You know, music is all about taking inspiration from others and building onto it, making it your own. But there's a lot of instances, especially within classic rock, where they just blatantly stole. They just blatantly stole from these artists, these Black artists, and did not give them credit. They claimed all the inspiration as their own. They are rock legends, music geniuses, and they didn't credit the people who actually came up with the songs and who actually had cultural ties to the songs and to the music. So bear with me, keep that in mind as we continue on through many of the albums to come. So that's my piece on that. All right, next album we have is Need Your Light by Riot. They are an indie band, so definitely switching it up from the previous two albums. This album has 10 songs coming in at 35 minutes and 50 seconds. It was released on February 19th, 2016. We have quite a few different writers. I will put them here on the screen, perhaps. We shall see. Yes, maybe, I don't know. It has been described as an album that blends string music with 80s synths, which I think is kind of an interesting vibe. The synths and like the 80s, 70s synths are definitely coming back. This album is obviously a few years old at this point, but they can say they did it first, I guess. I don't know. But I read an article of an interview that was done with the band, and one of the most interesting things I found is that they were writing this album after they had gotten off of their previous album's tour. And they had taken a break, and they were like, we're not gonna rush ourselves with this one. We're gonna take our time, we're gonna entertain any ideas we have, we're gonna keep ourselves interested and excited about the project. And that was one of the most like influential things for their writing process, is because they didn't try and rush it. They weren't trying to just put it out. So it's really just more of them experimenting and not trying to sound like their previous albums. They're trying to find a new sound, which I always really respect when artists do it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But you know, I respect everybody who tries. They gotta try. And then another fun thing about the album is the name of it. So it's called Need Your Light, which obviously can be a reference to finding love and finding light in someone else. But the lead singer of the band actually said that one of the alternate meanings is finding light in your life, finding purpose, finding a reason for yourself. And so I think that's pretty meaningful. That's something that I feel like a lot of people, especially in the past few years, have been trying to work on. I definitely have. Just finding purpose in yourself and finding something that you enjoy doing for you and not for other people, which I think is very, very important. All right, and then my favorite song off of this one was Instant Breakup. So this song has very similar vibes to another album that I'll talk about in the future, but that was one of my top albums of 2022, and that was Apocalypse Whenever by Bad Sons. And it just has a very like summery poppy vibe, which I kind of have been really into. Probably said vibe a lot, and I apologize, but you know, music gives off vibes. We're gonna go with it, we're gonna stick with it, okay? Gosh, thank you. The next album is Dopamine by Borns. Now this was a very vital album to my high school years, I would say. However, we'll get into some of the reasons why I don't really enjoy it anymore towards the end. This album has 11 songs, coming in at around 40 minutes and 30 seconds. It was released on October 16th, 2015 by Interscope Records, and it is Born's debut album. So this was kind of his big breakout moment, and everybody expected great things from him. One of the main themes throughout the album is just feelings associated with love, which, you know, it's been done, but hey, he did it in a different way, so props to him. It has been described as pop synth with 70s disco and R&B influences, which I can agree with. I wouldn't say so much disco, in my opinion, my humble opinion, but, you know, I'll trust the music reviewers at allmusic.com. Props to them. Thanks for the info. But we're actually not going to spend too much more time on this album because in 2018, Borns had several sexual misconduct allegations raised against him. And since then, I think he has released like one song, which makes sense because, you know, you're a piece of shit. So, crazy how nobody wants to listen to music from someone who commits sexual assault. Even though that's not always the case, but that's a personal gripe I have, and I'm sure we will talk more about that later. Oh, I guess if we have to pick a favorite song off the album, it would probably be 10,000 Emerald Pools. Fun fact about this album, Electric Love, which was one of the main singles off of there, I found out was my ex and his ex's song, so that was fun information to find out, and I never really liked the song too much after that. Who would have guessed? Who would have known? Crazy stuff. Anyways, moving on. All right, our next album is one of the biggest albums of 2022. It is Renaissance by Queen Bee herself, Miss Beyonce. It is quite a mega album, but I do not think any of her fans are complaining. It is 16 songs coming in at about 1 hour and 2 minutes, which is very long for an album. But I did it. I listened to the whole thing and I enjoyed it. I had a good time. Now there is quite a lot to talk about with this album, so I'm gonna try and be as brief as possible, but holy cow, holy cannoli friends, did we have a lot of interesting things about this album. It was released on July 29th, 2022 by Parkwood Entertainment and Columbia Records. So this is heavily influenced by the post-70s disco and black music era, which Beyonce does impeccably. Really, like, I really don't think anyone else could do it in the way she does it. I think Beyonce has gone from making songs for other people and making songs for a wide audience of people, which is never a bad thing, especially when you're starting out in your career. But Beyonce is literally one of the biggest stars in the world, and so now she's using her platform, her influence, and her talent to fully showcase and put the spotlight on a lot of overlooked and underknown black creators, especially artists from the disco era. If you want a super in-depth video about the history of disco, I highly recommend the video by Polyphonic. I'll put the link in the description, but I watched it and it's just kind of crazy. Crazy how much hate for disco is rooted in racism, which I think a lot of people knew, and especially black people knew. But obviously I am very white, so this was not something that was part of my upbringing. It's very interesting and it's very unique to see how the cultural influences weave in with the music and how they both influence each other, but I will let you watch that video if you want to learn more about it. So this album, Beyonce said, is dedicated to her Uncle Johnny, who helped raise her and unfortunately passed away from HIV-related complications. There are over 100 writing credits on this album, which is a lot of writers to be involved, but with such a huge album and being so long, it makes sense. So I will put the beautiful list of these writers over here. Debuted at #1 on Billboard, which I don't think anybody was surprised at. It's Beyonce, for fuck's sake. Like, obviously it's gonna debut at #1, and I think rightfully so. It actually made Beyonce the only artist to ever have their first 7 albums debut at #1 on Billboard. So yeah, her talent. Undisputed, incomparable, that's the word, not incomparable. She announced that this would be the first of a 3-part series that she recorded throughout the pandemic. So that kind of leaves everybody wondering, where is she gonna go from here? This is Renaissance, what's coming next? You know, what comes after the Renaissance? Now, we have a lot of controversies to get into here. To begin, it was leaked before it was supposed to be on July 27th, as it had been sent to some French retailers early, and they allowed the recordings, the audio, the music to get out before it was supposed to. So there was a huge uprising of Beyonce fans I saw personally on Twitter who were saying, don't listen to the album, she worked so hard on it, don't listen to the leaks, blah, 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 blah. I think a lot of people abided by that. I sure did. I waited a decent amount of time before I listened to the album. I kind of waited for the hype to die down, so to speak, as I do with a lot of things for some reason. Don't ask me why, but you know, I did eventually, and I very much enjoyed it. All right, next controversy, a sample of the singer Kelly's Milkshake. Perhaps many of you have heard of it before. It is a classic early 2000s song. If you haven't, well, you're too young. Go listen to it. Get cultured. Anyways, so a sample of that song was originally supposed to be included on Energy, but was later pulled because Kelly claimed that they were given no notice and they were not asked for permission, despite being given a writing credit for this sample. Beyonce said, okay, bitch, fine, and took it off. She just got rid of it. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Done. Next controversy. The song Heated originally used a word that many disability advocates find to be a slur against differently abled people. So Beyonce went ahead and removed that slur. Some people use it in everyday vernacular. Some people do find it to be a slur, so I won't be saying it here. But if you really want to look it up, I'm sure you can find it. Anyway, she removed it from the album, and her justification was that it is used as a different meaning within the African-American vernacular, which is understandable as it has been used by several other African-American artists, including Lizzo most recently, and she also removed the word from her song as well. So now our most stupid and final controversy from this album is the duo Right Said Fred with their hit single I'm Too Sexy, and perhaps their one-hit wonder. I don't really know any more of their songs. That's the only one I'm familiar with, and I'm pretty sure the only one most people are familiar with. They came at Beyonce and claimed that she did not get their permission to use a sample of their song on Alien Superstar. However, of course, Beyonce's people had the receipts of this, that the duo was notified that it was going to be used in May. Then they approved it in June, and they were paid for their feature, basically, in August. Now, the most interesting part is they, because of that sample, own more of that song than any other of the writers credited. Like, they own so much of that song. They're dumbasses. You want a source for that? Look up anything else they've ever said about anything ever. So, you know. Opinions on the album. I'll try and keep it brief because there was a lot to say about it, obviously. I thought it was fantastic. I know a lot of people have mixed opinions about it. I do think it's a little bit controversial that there were mixed opinions about it because it is so heavily influenced by like that 70s disco and like black music. So it's a little like, perhaps some of those old feelings towards disco and hints, little sprinkles of racism tossed in there still exist today. But, you know, no proof, and everyone's entitled to their own opinion, so live and let be. But I really loved it. I'm a big fan of disco. I really think the origins and the progression and everything with that has been very interesting to see and track throughout music, because you can track it. Again, watch the polyphonic video, very good. My favorite song off of the album was actually the one with the Right Said Fred sample, Alien Superstar. It's just, I mean, the whole album is fun, and the whole album, it tells a story. It's like time to be you, time to be free, time to just do what you want to do, to have fun. And I think that was kind of a big theme for me this year as well, so I really related to it. Plus, it's just a good song, and like all of them are really good. If you listen to them, if you can get through the hour and 2 minutes of it, I think you will enjoy it as well. So I know I am recommending a lot of these albums, but I just have very high respect for pretty much anyone who makes music, because it's not an easy thing to do. And I don't think a lot of people who don't make music realize that all the time, because there's so much of it. The market is very oversaturated, especially with the internet taking off the way it has, with YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, TikTok even. It's a very oversaturated industry. There's so much music being put out all the time, and not all of it's good. Not all of it's great to listen to. However, I can respect anybody who has the guts and the talent to put music out into the world. Hence why I don't want to do a rating system with these albums, because I don't have the musical prowess to do what they're doing, so I don't feel that it's fair for me to talk about their music and be like, it sucks. So no. Moving on to our final album for the week, we have Reflections by Misterwives.
Hi guys, so me editing here. I'm kind of dumb, and instead of saying the name of the album, which is Our Own House, I said the name of the song on the album, Reflections. So apologies, please forgive me, thank you.
Now, this one, I have a very special place in my heart for this one. This album has 12 songs, coming in at around 41 minutes and 30 seconds. It was released on February 14th, 2015 by Photo Finish Records. It ended up reaching number 31 on the Billboard 200. All of the writers credited for the album are actually members of the band, with Mandy Lee, the lead singer, being a writer or co-writer for all of the songs. She is extremely talented. Love her. She's wonderful. Now, I found this description of the album written by Billboard writer Garrett Camps to be quite interesting. He describes the album as the pop rock answer to Iron Man we didn't know we needed. Now, I was slightly confused by this description. I'm not quite sure what it means. I think it's positive from what I can tell, but that was just a very, very interesting description. No hate to the man whatsoever, but hey, everybody has their own opinions, and some people are more descriptive than others with it. So respect to that. It has been described as Motown, reggae, and EDM mixed together, which I don't think a lot of people would think of as being from this band. But I guess I can see it. There's definitely certain elements that I definitely enjoyed. To get into my opinions about the album, as I mentioned before, little piece of my heart belongs to this album. So it came out in 2015, and like I said, that's around the time that I started actually getting into new music and finding new things. And I was a little late to the game, but I was entering my emo era. So that's when I was listening to a lot of Panic at the Disco, unfortunately. However, I was a very big fan of their Death of a Bachelor album, so I did go see them on tour, and Misterwives actually opened up for Panic at that tour, and that's really when I got introduced to them, and I was like, oh, this is actually really cute and really good, and they've got some bangers. So for the past, 7-8 years now, I've been listening to Misterwives and anything they put out, and I think overall pretty consistently good. This album, big fan, obviously, because it was like the first one that I heard and fell in love with. My favorite song off the album is probably one that many of you have heard as well. I believe it was a single and it was released on the radio, but that would be Reflections. It's just very pretty, very cute song, and I think it's got a good meaning behind it. Overall, would recommend. So that wraps up our 7 albums for today. I know this is probably a pretty long video. I don't know if all of them are going to be this long. Again, my first video. I'm trying, people. I'm trying really hard, okay? Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Oh, you're too kind. You're too kind. Anywho, so thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, I very, 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 very much appreciate it. And if you liked what you saw, you want to see more, go ahead, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I'll put my socials in the description if you'd like to follow me on anything. Other than that, yeah, thanks for watching. I really appreciate you, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you.